Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Six Pack Network. I'm your host, Dylan Clemons, and today we are continuing our training camp check in shows where we are going around to all 32 NFL teams and interviewing a beat writer or reporter on what they've seen or heard during training camp. In this episode, we will be discussing the Buffalo Bills, and here helping us do so is Nick Sabato, who is a Bills sports editor and reporter for the Niagara Gazette and Lockport Union Sun and Journal. Nick, I appreciate you giving us your time in such a busy part of the season with training camp here. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Before we jump into the interview, I want to remind everyone, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for notifications so you know when we have a new video drop. And head on over to fantasy6pack.net/plans to become an all-access member, where you get access to our award-winning rankings, draft cheat sheets, F6P Discord, where you can ask all your custom league questions to anybody on the Fantasy Six Pack staff. And right now, you can also save a little cash by using promo code F6PNFL24 for 15% off. But without further ado, Nick, let's just jump into things. And the first question I have for you, the past few seasons, it's been a little bit of a talking point around the Bills, I feel, about Josh Allen maybe taking a step back in the rushing department. But then last year, bam, he hits us with another 15 rushing touchdown season, which was just crazy. And it kind of carried his fantasy football production. Have you heard anything about him maybe slowing down the rushing, or do you just think this is part of his identity and that's just how he plays the game and he can't help himself?
I think that's part of what makes him Josh Allen. We saw last year at the beginning of the year he wasn't running as much, and the Bills weren't as successful.
Sure.
Now, like there's a sweet spot there. Like I think they've lost one regular season game when he's carried the ball 10 times, but they actually have a losing record when he's like between 90 and 100 yards or over 100 yards. So they want to find that middle ground. And can he duplicate 15 rushing touchdowns? I mean, I think that was an NFL record for a quarterback. So that's probably a tough ask again. But, I think he's going to do his fair share of running this year.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that for sure as well. Jumping over to the running back side of things here, James Cook really emerged as a very solid fantasy producer, especially towards the end of the year. Then they go out in the NFL draft and take Ray Davis later in the draft. Do you think the addition of Ray Davis maybe holds James Cook from maybe taking another step forward in this offense? And what kind of role do you see Ray Davis sliding into on this Bills team?
I think the number one spot is James Cook's and James Cook's alone. Does that mean he's going to get 20 carries a game? No, that's just not how the NFL works anymore. But, the Bills want a number 2 running back. At times last year before Damian Harris got hurt, they were using 3. Joe Brady really leaned into James Cook a little bit more than Ken Dorsey did, and his numbers went up across the board. But it's a 2-back league. And for Ray Davis, I think they wanted to go out and get a guy who had a similar skill set to James Cook, just in terms of being able to catch the ball, being able to make some guys miss. They're different styles. James Cook's a little quicker, a little faster. Ray Davis has a little more power element. But I wouldn't call the number 2 job Ray Davis's yet. Ty Johnson has been out about a week with a hamstring injury. But before that, I mean, you could probably say that number 2 job was at the time Ty Johnson's.
Okay.
Johnson has some pop to him. He can catch the ball. I think he's proven that throughout his time in the NFL. He didn't get a whole lot done carrying the ball last year. And limited opportunities. He really started to come on, when Brady took over. I think he had a receiving touchdown in Brady's first game as a play caller against the Jets. And before that, he was just kind of a kick return guy. And before that, he was on the practice squad before Damian Harris got hurt. But he kind of cut into Latavius Murray's carries and snaps towards the end of the season. depending on how long Johnson's injury kind of prolongs, they brought in Ray Davis for a reason, but he's got to beat out Ty Johnson for that spot.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Definitely fair. Looking at the wide receivers, and this was a big change for this Bills offense. No Stephon Diggs, he departs going to Houston in a trade. They also lose Gabe Davis to the Jaguars, who leaves in free agency. You got Khalil Shakur, you draft Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel comes over. Who is the wide receiver that, if you were a betting man, that you would put your money on to have a breakout season this year for the Bills?
I think Josh Allen really trusts Khalil Shakir in tough situations. He kind of showed that last year towards the end of the year, where Shakir made a couple of big third down catches and fourth down catches. Not only again, he had a kind of the game sealer against the Chargers. He had a big third down catch against the Steelers. Another one against the Chiefs in the playoffs, both those in the playoffs. So in big moments, I think Khalil Shakir has kind of established himself in that role. Keon Coleman has made some plays in training camp. He's made some highlight reel catches, just jumping over guys. I think Allen has kind of established that he trusts him to go up and get the ball in the red zone. And then, Curtis Samuel, we haven't seen a ton of Curtis Samuel. They plan on moving him around. He could be in the backfield. He can be in the slot. He can line up outside. They've thrown some screens to him, but they really haven't unleashed him in practice yet. And whether or not they're still kind of figuring out what they want to do with him, or they're kind of saving him, they don't want to really unload everything they want to do with him in front of 4,000 people in practice. That remains to be seen. But it'd be between those three guys. And right now it's tough to say.
That's fair. Curtis Samuel is someone who I'm intrigued by, especially reuniting with Joe Brady, who, when they were in Carolina together, he kind of unlocked Curtis Samuel a little bit and put up one of his better seasons. So definitely interested in that. And then this next guy I want to talk about, Mr. Dalton Kincaid. He is a very polarizing player in the fantasy realm right now. And everyone is extremely high on him. Do you see him possibly leading this team in targets, since there's really no bona fide alpha here any longer?
Well, I think if you're going to pick a guy to lead the team in targets, it would be Dalton Kincaid. He's been Allen's, favorite target in camp so far. He kind of established that in the second half of last season. I think Dawson Knox is going to have a bounce back year. He was really plagued by injuries last year, and even when he came back, they really didn't get him into the flow of the offense too much. But they're paying him too much money, and he's frankly too talented to not, to split reps with Kincaid. So you're going to see a lot of two tight ends. And when I say that, I mean, Kincaid's going to be on the field with Knox, but it doesn't mean he's going to line up as a traditional tight end. They're going to put him in the slot. They're going to line him up outside. I think you're going to see Kincaid a little bit more downfield. Today in practice, he beat Taylor Rapp downfield and made a one-handed catch, a 30-yard one-handed catch. I think if you get him on a safety or a linebacker, you're going to see him downfield a little bit more. He's not going to outrun cornerbacks up the sideline, but he has the ability to stretch the field. And I think, especially early last year, a lot of the stuff that they did with him was within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. And I think this year you're going to see a little bit more of, his whole toolbox.
Awesome. Yeah, hearing that he's being lined up in the slot, that's awesome. That's music to my ears. That's sure.
I think he was in the slot about 50% of the time last year, but what you didn't see is him split wide as like an X or a Z, and I think you're going to see a little bit more of that because they're so interchangeable in what they can do in different pieces they have.
Sure. Yeah, he's definitely a weapon. And then the last question I have for you before get you out of here. This is a fantasy focused channel, so I want to get one fantasy football question. And who is the player that is going to surprise people the most, good or bad, that fantasy players need to know about from the Bills?
I think what you're going to see out of the Bills would be reminiscent of the late 2000s, early 2010s Saints, where they have obviously the quarterback who puts up a lot of numbers.
Yep.
And maybe they'll have one guy, like the Saints had Marquez Colston for a while, had some nice years, and then he kind of dropped off a little bit, and it was Jimmy Graham. I think that guy's probably Dalton Kincaid. And then everyone after that is going to be hit or miss because they have so many guys and they're so interchangeable that it's going to be hard to kind of pinpoint, who's going to do what every week. I think it's going to depend on the matchups, depend on the looks that they get. 1 week it could be Curtis Samuel, 1 week it could be Keon Coleman, 1 week it could be Khalil Shakir. They've got so many different guys, and I mean the receiving core really isn't even set yet. I mean I think they've got a top four of Coleman, Samuel, Shakir, and Matt Collins, and then it depends on what they're going to do after that. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is obviously on the roster. He hasn't had a tremendous camp, but his contract's guaranteed.
Okay.
They're not paying him a lot, but whether they keep him or get rid of him, they're going to pay him either way.
Sure.
So it depends if he moves in there. He's probably out of Matt Collins if they keep him, just based on their careers. But Tyrell Shavers, who's on the practice squad last year, he's had a really nice camp. He really started to come on during OTAs, and it's kind of kept through. Those guys have been the top six. And whether they keep six or not depends on what they want to do with special teams.
Sure.
Shavers is a big special teams guy. Hollins can play special teams. It just depends on what they want to do there. How they want to handle the kickoff returns. Andy Isabella, he's kind of been handling a lot of kickoffs. Do they want to keep him solely for kickoffs and punt returns? They've done it in the past. I don't know if they want to do it again. You have Chase Claypool, who's on the roster, but has really, for the vast majority of camp, been out with a toe injury. So haven't really been able to see a whole lot of what he can do, what he's got left in the tank. I would put him on the outside looking in even before the toe injury, just because I think if they're going to keep a guy, like that, you got to play special teams unless you're in that top three, top four. And he really hadn't proven he was there yet. He was playing some special teams in practice, but that's not really something he's done during his career. So with the injury, with just not seeing a whole lot of him, I would put him on the outside looking in at the moment. Justin Shorter is still around. They liked his potential last year enough to make the roster. He got hurt again. He's missed the last two practices, but really hasn't been noticeable as a receiver during that time. So do they still value his potential? Do they still value his special teams play? We'll see. KJ Hamler is still on the roster. He was obviously a second-round pick with the Broncos a few years back. Injuries has really kind of derailed his career. At times he's shown some of the pop of old. At other times he's kind of been MIA. I think the top six though are right now are Coleman, Samuel, Shakir, Hollins, MVS, and Tyrell Shavers.
That's fair. Perfect. Nick, that was absolutely fantastic stuff. Before we get you out of here, go ahead, let everybody know where they can follow you and find all your work at.
Yeah, it's at Nick Sabato, GNN. And then you can go to our website. It's Niagara-Gazette.com.
Awesome, Nick. I appreciate it. make sure to check out all his work over there. But that wraps up our Buffalo Bills training camp check-in. I'll be back in your feeds tomorrow with the Washington Commanders check-in. But until then, for Nick Sabato, I'm Dylan Clemons, and I will talk to you next time.